Just 5 more minutes. We all say that, right? 5 more minutes and before I know it, it's 3 a.m. and I've spiraled down the digital rabbit hole. My brain's fried, but I keep telling myself just one more video.
When I'm at work, I think like, oh, I can't wait to play my iPad games. And then when I play my iPad, I can't wait to get an ad, like one of those 60-second ads where you have to watch a YouTube video, because I'm like, oh, that'll be my little phone break.
I feel like my brain is turning to goo. It's mush, and it's goopified.
20 years of your life is spent just scrolling on your phone.
Looking at your phone.
What's social media doing to our brain?
Continually pressing on the pleasure centers in your brain. The more you press on them, they begin to become numb.
I think one of the most damaging things about doom scrolling that not a lot of people realize is that you start to dilute your own memories.
I genuinely don't know what's happening, but my memory is getting so bad.
Does anyone else have literally no memory of anything beyond like 4 or 5 years ago?
I feel like we live in a society now where like nobody thinks for themselves anymore. Take what they see in videos or whatever's trending in the world, and they will take those views and make it their own and just follow the leader.
Hey, quick minor request of you before you go and pull up that tab to put this video in 1.5 speed. Maybe don't. Not because it helps my retention, though I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a conflict of interest, but because you clicked on this video to try and figure out why our brains feel broken. And to do that, it's for the best that we start off by experiencing this one in real time, because we've become a culture that consumes faster than we can even question what the consuming is doing to us. And it's the reason why video essayists like me put in stock overlays and animations every 5 to 10 seconds, because people will leave if they aren't entertained to their liking.
Are you not entertained?
And you're not alone in this. Honestly, you'd be hard pressed to find me watching a YouTube video without also scrolling my phone at the same time. Multitasking is the default now, and monofocus is for chumps. And I know, we've heard it all before, it's the damn phones. But today I want to go deeper into what that actually means, because as it turns out, it's not just social media that's the problem, but the screen economy as a whole that's doing long-term, possibly irreversible damage to how we think, focus, and function. But the real kicker is that despite what the tech giants want us to believe, this isn't just something that we're doing to ourselves, it's something that's being done to us intentionally. A subtle, ongoing fracturing of our ability to be present, to resist distraction, and to own our own time. So the real question we have to figure out today is, what is late-stage screen addiction, and how do we slow down in a world that's only speeding up? So we've come a long way from the techno-optimistic days of the past. With milestones like Steve Jobs unveiling the first iPhone, it all felt like signs that we were headed in the right direction. Like we were using technology to streamline our work and enhance our play. It was revolutionary to have everything from your phone, calculator, messages, and web browser all in one pocket-sized device. Offloading all those menial tasks once felt like a game changer in boosting our capabilities and making us more efficient. But as time went on and our efficiency increased, something strange also happened. We weren't actually saving any time. While these devices and apps have taken countless small tasks off our plates, they've also made it nearly impossible to disconnect. In streamlining our lives, they've simultaneously tethered us to our screens and replaced tedious work with constant notifications, endless scrolling, and a sense that we should always be doing something. As said here, let's be real with ourselves. How many of us are using the time afforded us by our banking app to write poetry? We just passively consume crap on Instagram. What would have happened if Benjamin Franklin had Twitter? Would he have been on Twitter all the time? Would he have made his inventions and breakthroughs? Since day one, we've been sold this story of smartphones improving our lives, but I don't have to tell you that that sentiment feels like a fairy tale at this point. And the zeitgeist of the 2020s is marked by less excitement and more by exhaustion, and in many cases, an outright resentment towards our phones. But the interesting thing is, like I said, it's not just social media that's the problem, but pretty much everything is bombarding us with requests for attention. Even the photo app is not just a storage tool anymore, but your own overly sentimental, personalized photo album generator that's always prompting you to check out the new memory compilation of the day. At this point, it feels like every app is just a modern version of Clippy, popping up uninvited, trying to help, and mostly just being annoying.
I have an unbelievable deal for you.
So let's take a second and talk about the notification epidemic, because boy howdy, is it ever outrageous. Do you remember the days when you would get that red bubble pop up on the corner of your Facebook app because someone tagged you in a photo? Well, we don't get that luxury anymore, because instead, now we get red bubble galore over everything. Like, hey, your friend posted a picture of themselves that had has nothing to do with you, why don't we notify you? The apps are so desperate for us to open them up that they'll find any and every excuse to send you an alert. And talking from personal experience, this has led to complete notification fatigue. No red badge, pop-up, or banner will faze me anymore because I've become totally desensitized to it, which is a problem because I'm always missing important messages because they all get buried in the flood of useless notifications. But there are many other sneaky ways that these apps manipulate us into hopping on. Some are even right in our face, like Instagram's 24-hour story feature, which puts pressure on us to check in every day so we don't miss anything. Then there's Snapchat's streaks that encourage you to also check in every day because if you miss a day, then you lose your streak. But on the sneakier side, there's something called variable ratio scheduling, where notifications are sent at different times than the action was made to get your attention when you aren't on your phone.
You know, when you've had a really long day at work and you want to have a mute moment, and that's what I call it when you just want to sit on the couch and rot and not talk to anybody. Why is that whenever you want to have a mute moment, every single app on your phone decides to start sending you notifications? The Ring neighbor, someone lost their cat, somebody's at your door, there's an Amber Alert. MyFitnessPal wants you to track your dinner because you forgot to do that. Fable's like, hey girl, reminder to track your reading so you don't lose your reading streak.
McDonald's hooks us by appealing to our body's cravings for certain flavors. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter hook us by delivering what psychologists call variable rewards. Messages, photos, and likes appear on no set schedule, so we check for them compulsively, never sure when we'll receive that dopamine activating prize. And this wouldn't be a video about screen addiction if we didn't talk about the phenomenon of the infinite scroll. While TikTok was the first to perfect this technique, it is something that we've seen all over the internet because it's just so effective. These companies are in the business of removing as many decisions as they can from us because when we get the chance to think about what we're doing, we might think wrong, in regards to their business models anyway. But with infinite scroll, we don't get the millisecond chance to decide whether or not we want to keep scrolling because we're fed the next video before that thought can even cross our minds. Point being, these apps have meticulously engineered their platforms to draw us in with the curiosity of notifications and then manipulate our minds to keep us there. But this is something we all generally know, right? Like, our phones are addictive. That's old news. The point I'm trying to make, however, is that the phone addiction is not our fault. No matter how many tech CEOs will tell you that you have the free will to close the app whenever you want, the addiction is built right into the design and a distraction is their fuel.
Is it true that someone in your company said that it was an existential threat if you lost teen users?
Senator, I don't...
Is that true or not? Because we have a document that said that.
Senator, I assume that's true.
We are falling exactly in line with what these shareholders want from us, constant growth. Like, as many times as Zuckerberg says that their mission is to connect people, that doesn't change the fact that the app literally does the exact opposite.
So our new mission is to bring the world closer together.
While some blame our collective tech addiction on personal failings, like weak willpower, Harris points a finger at the software itself. That itch to glance at our phone is a natural reaction to apps and websites engineered to get us scrolling as frequently as possible. The attention economy, which showers profits on companies that seize our focus, has kicked off what Harris calls a race to the bottom of the brainstem. You could say that it's my responsibility to exert self-control when it comes to digital usage, but that's not acknowledging that there's 1,000 people on the other side of the screen whose job it is to break down whatever responsibility I can maintain. So I used to think that apps weren't changing how we think, they were just optimizing for attention, and that's how they kept us engaged. But I've come to learn that they're actively breaking our brains. And the first thing to go is our potential. What I mean by that is, as we know, notifications and scrolling give us a lot of dopamine. And we love it, right? We love, after a long day of work, getting to scroll away our feelings and just get spoon-fed brain candy. The problem with this, though, is that these apps are overloading our system and can lead to dopamine tolerance. The low-effort, high-reward form of content super saturates our dopamine receptors, leading to the brain building up its tolerance to that media.
What's social media doing to our brain?
Continually pressing on your nucleus accumbens that produces dopamine. But the problem with that is the more you press on them, they begin to become numb. And you need more and more excitement, more and more stimulation in order to feel anything at all.
This means that things that are fun one day actually become less fun the next. TikTok, Reels, and video games all start off super fun, but quickly turn into not bringing you joy, but serve as a desperate attempt to feel the same high that you felt the first time you jumped on. It becomes harder for us to feel joy or motivation from smaller, slower experiences because our brain has built up a tolerance. Think about it like the amount of juice in a lemon. At the beginning, if you squeeze a little bit, you get a lot of juice, but the more you exhaust it, the harder you have to squeeze. Technology is like the lemon juicer, as it squeezes out a ton of juice, but then there's no juice left. And this cycle can go even further, leading to what's called terminal boredom, where nothing really brings you joy anymore because the bar is so high for dopamine. And what this looks like is that anytime you do anything that's not with a screen, you get an intense level of boredom. And if that sounds awfully familiar to something else, that's because it is. All these things can trigger dopamine release or a dopamine rush. This feel-good neurotransmitter is also involved in reinforcement. That's why when we try one of those cookies, we might come back for another, or two, or three. The dark side of dopamine is the intense feeling of reward people feel when they take drugs, which can lead to addiction. And like I said, the long-term effects of this is that your brain's threshold for dopamine becomes so high that everyday things that should feel rewarding just don't anymore.
You know, we've really messed up relaxation because the millennial generation, I used to come to this same beach house, my aunt's beach house as a kid. Look at this view. Gorgeous view, just sitting here, nothing to do but drink my little sparkling water, and all I can think of is to look at my phone. And when I was a kid and came here, I used to just listen to music. I had a Walkman with, I think, just the Garden State soundtrack, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I would, as a preteen, I guess, I would listen to this Garden State soundtrack and just look at the view. But now I get anxious and I need to do something. You know what I mean? And my parents, when they were my age or when they were a preteen, they would sit somewhere like this, I'm sure, just without music and just enjoy it. And then their parents would have to sit. I mean, I don't even think they'd sit. I think they'd just have to, I don't know, chop wood or something. So I think we had it the best, but then we took it too far.
Activities that take time to deliver the same sensation, like painting, journaling, or working towards a goal, start to feel boring or frustrating because your brain isn't used to waiting for the dopamine hit. And that's the real problem. The things that move your life forward are the ones that are getting left behind. So what happens? We get overstimulated. The brain is constantly chasing dopamine, and when you live in that environment long enough, the brain adapts by becoming numb to it. Things that used to bring pleasure, reading, being outside, friendships, don't feel as rewarding. That leads to emotional flattening, a lack of motivation, a sense of meaninglessness. When your brain won't even give you the patience to read a book, play a sport, do some art, or even long-term goals like studying, learning a new skill, or building a business, then you stop making real progress in your life. Because the way you spend your dopamine today is the way you'll want to spend it tomorrow. If you spend your time practicing something meaningful, then your brain learns to crave that reward. But if you spend your day deep in scroll, then that becomes your default. And the deeper you go, the harder it is to pull yourself out because that's all your brain knows. These apps are hijacking our natural motivation circuit to make us motivated to scroll over anything else in our lives. They stop us from doing things that are good for us because they're hard and take too long to get that feel-good aftermath. And the effects of this are right in front of us too, like the fact that book sales in the US have climbed over the years, but the number of people actually reading has decreased. We have so many things that we want to do and we buy into them, but then we can't actually get ourselves to do it. So now I want to pivot a little bit and talk about what actually happens to our brains when we are always offloading all our tasks onto our devices. Because as it turns out, those tasks were actually good for us, and without them, our brains start to rust. This is because, just like muscles in our body, we need to work our brain muscles to maintain strength and function. When we rely on our phones so much that we stop thinking for ourselves, we eventually lose the ability to.
I saw this woman talking about our brains and how they're affected by doom scrolling. Basically, she was saying though, she lately had been finding it difficult to find certain words when she was talking, just she couldn't think of it because she's not working that muscle as much, and that scared me. because that's been happening to me.
In just the same way that if you don't use your muscles, you become weaker. If you don't use your brain, it will become non-functional. As seen here, studies show internet addiction is associated with structural and functional changes in the brain regions involving emotional processing, executive attention, decision-making, and cognitive control. To put this to the test, I would like to ask you to solve a long division question for me. For some of you, it might be a breeze. For most of us, we might struggle through it. And for a few, you're not getting further than a blank stare. And that's because we have our trusty calculator app, right? There's no way I'm doing long division just for fun when I can punch it into this thing. And this on its own is not inherently bad. I'm not saying to stop using your phone calculators, but when we're offloading all mentally challenging tasks to our phone, then our brains, like I said, lose the ability to take them on anymore. This study found that increased use of screens among adults may harm learning, memory, and mental health, as well as the potential to increase the risk of early neurodegeneration. The study shows that in adults aged 18 to 25, excessive screen time causes thinning of the cerebral cortex, the brain's outermost layer responsible for processing memory and cognitive functions, such as decision-making and problem-solving. And that leads us into the effects phones are having on our memory. I really thought it was just mom brain that was ruining my memory, but now I have a real fear that it might be my phone, because I had my first son in 2020, the same year that screens took over everyone's lives, so I didn't realize who the real culprit might be. Of those surveyed by memory researcher Catherine Loveday in 2021, 80% felt like their memories were worse than before the pandemic.
I genuinely don't know what's happening, but my memory is getting so bad. I could have a conversation with somebody. If you ask me to recall that conversation, can't. No idea what was said. But I used to be able to recall conversations from 2002. I can't remember any important information either, which affects me in work life and everything else. If I get an appointment and I have to put it on my calendar, I literally forget from minute to minute what I have to put in the calendar.
And the reason phones affect our memories is multifaceted. For one, we literally don't have to remember anything anymore because our phones remember everything for us. We don't need to memorize friends' phone numbers, home addresses, or birthdays, nor do we even need to remember if we're out of butter or how long ago you left the chicken thawing in the sink. While yes, physical notes have served people for millennia to help with this problem, we still previously relied a lot more on our memories and just supplemented with physical reminders.
So basically, the idea of friction is that there is value in things being a tiny bit difficult. And so when we use digital tools, there really isn't a lot of friction. Dating apps, it makes dating very easy. DoorDash makes things coming to your house very easy. So you can kind of have this frictionless existence. Whereas in the physical world, there's a lot of friction. And so it's this idea that there's a bunch of friction in the physical world and perhaps not enough in the digital world.
And that shift comes with real physical consequences for our brains. Warning, this is when the quotes start to get a little bit scary. Additional studies found that adults who engage in excessive screen time or have a diagnosed smartphone addiction had lower gray matter volume. Gray matter is brain tissue essential for daily human functioning and is responsible for everything from movement to memory to emotions. Gray matter volume naturally decreases as we age, so along with reducing screen time, engaging in activities that maintain our gray matter volume and promote brain health, such as exercise and movement, restorative sleep, social engagement, and stress management is crucial. How awful to think that we are deteriorating our gray matter and wasting away by not using our brains. Again, it's not just the social media apps here that are the villains. It's all the tools that are taking jobs away from our brain, even your GPS. We can predict that prolonged use of GPS will likely reduce gray matter density in the hippocampus. GPS-based navigational systems don't require you to form a complex geographic map. Instead, they just tell you orientations like turn left at the next light. These are very simple behavioral responses at a certain stimulus. When exploring the spatial capacities of people who have been using GPS for a very long time, they show impairments in spatial memory abilities that require the hippocampus. Map reading is hard, and that's why we give it away to devices so easily. But hard things are good for you because they engage cognitive processes and brain structures that have other effects on your general cognitive functioning. Huge yikes, to say the least. The second aspect of the memory problem is that we're not giving ourselves the chance to store memories. We move so quickly from task to task, from app to app, that information leaves our brain as quickly as it's entered. We aren't giving our minds the chance to process and organize events in the way that it needs.
I think one of the most damaging things about doom scrolling that not a lot of people realize is that you start to dilute your own memories. Like, I've noticed that my own memories, my own meaningful moments, they don't even really stick in my brain anymore. They just come and go in 10 seconds, just like all the other garbage that I feed into it. They just get lost in the sea of trash that I'm funneling into my brain all day.
Tech expert Linda Stone actually coined a term for this phenomenon, calling it continual partial attention. As she says, I became really interested in whether the constant distractions caused by our devices might be impacting our ability to actually not just accumulate memories to begin with, but transfer them into long-term storage in a way that might impede our ability to think deep and interesting thoughts. One of the things that impedes our brain's ability to transfer memories from short to long-term storage is distraction. If you get distracted in the middle of it by a notification or by the overwhelming urge to pick up your phone, you're not going to have the physical changes take place that are required to store that memory. This is something I've become hyper aware of since writing this essay, and I just noticed it last night where I finished a movie on Netflix, and before the end credits even finish, Netflix is showing you trailers for other movies, and I felt like I couldn't even process the movie that I just watched because they're just trying to hook you on something else, right? But the thing is, this is a cyclical problem where the deeper you get into it, the harder it is to get out of it. Because when we outsource our memories to external devices, then we become more reliant on those devices. And the more we're reliant on those devices, the more damage we're doing. And it gets to the point where we ultimately change how our memories work and are constantly missing things when we don't set reminders. Sounds familiar to me, I don't know about you. So instead of freeing up mental space to get more out of our lives, we end up giving more of ourselves to our devices. And now there's even growing concern that this constant offloading of cognitive tasks may be contributing to the rise of dementia. Okay, I do promise that this video is gonna get more positive, but it does have to get worse before it gets better. So let's talk about how we're losing our ability to think. How fun. But actually, the art of deep thinking is becoming one of the past. And with that, I wanna ask you, when was the last time you actually let your mind wander? With no directing or distracting at all. It's actually a lot harder these days to do that because we live in a storm of mental stimulation with no breaks.
If your mind is constantly running and you feel like you can't turn it off, there's that buzzing that never stops. I'm gonna tell you, you need to put the phone away. I know, doom scrolling feels so much better, and you know what happens when you put the phone away? You can hear the voices in your head. And who wants to do that? But like, what are the voices saying? Why are we scared of them?
But there's a reason why people say they get their eureka moments in the shower or while driving, because these are the rare moments we actually get reprieve of the noise and demands of daily life. But even those moments are compromised now with the diverse network of media we get to choose from. And that's the problem. We don't get to be left to our own thoughts, even if we want to. All this frenetic digital interruption is pulling our attention away from our thoughts and suppressing your default mode network. We're almost in this constant stimulus-driven, stimulus-bound environment, moving from one distraction to the next. If you don't remove yourself from that, it will suppress whatever train of thought you had. And I am such a victim of this. Like, I used to have this thought that any downtime was wasted time. So any chance I would get, I would listen to podcasts or YouTube videos. And that did mostly come from a place of me being a stay-at-home mom and a YouTuber at the same time because my research time was so limited, so I felt like I had to optimize every free moment. But as I've learned, it is not a waste of time to slow down. In fact, there are so many benefits to letting your mind wander and giving yourself space to think deeply. The reason deep thinking is so important is that it allows us time for thoughtful reflection and analysis and to make connections that we otherwise would have missed. This all leads to increased creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving. Author Johann Hari actually went on a 3-month technology detox to try and battle this. And what he had to say was, in that time, I felt more creative than I had since I was a child. Ideas started spinning out of my head. When I would get home and write them down, I realized I was having more creative ideas and making more connections in a single 3-hour walk than I usually had in a month. I started to let smaller moments of mind wandering in too. When I finished reading a book, I would just lie there for 20 minutes, thinking about it, staring out to the sea. Weirdly, lately, it seemed like letting my spotlight disappear entirely was improving my ability to think and to focus in some way I couldn't articulate. My consciousness drifted like boats I could see bobbing on the horizon. This is one of the most basic human experiences that is nearly going extinct because for the first time ever, if we don't want to think, we don't have to. But without this mind wandering, we have a harder time making sense of the world and also become more vulnerable to external sources telling us what to think and believe. If we aren't giving ourselves the time to think over our life and our decisions, then we don't know what to believe or stand for. Instead, we just become storage units for other people's sound bites. There's no time to analyze and critique when you don't even have an inner voice challenging the narratives you're absorbing 24/7.
I don't know if it's just me or not, but I feel like we live in a society now where like nobody thinks for themselves anymore. Like I feel like people don't have critical thinking skills anymore. Like people take other people's opinions and use it as their own. It's people are just going with the popular thing to say versus just like their own opinion. Like people just don't form their own opinions anymore.
And so weird enough, we're simultaneously living in a culture that can't focus but also can't mind wander either. We are completely consumed in a kind of mental purgatory of neither thinking nor resting, just cycling through shallow thoughts that disappear as quickly as a swipe. Hello from my couch. So as I was researching for this video, I was determined to find solutions to all these problems, which we will get more into later. But specifically with the deep thinking issue, I was getting really frustrated with myself that I myself never let my brain have a break. And so at a certain point, I just went outside to lay in the grass to try and decompress a little bit. And I expected to be out there for only like 5 minutes, but it ended up being closer to 30 because I was actually really enjoying myself and enjoying not thinking, essentially. But it wasn't until later that night that I realized that I was actually kind of meditating. I'd heard of the benefits of meditation before, but was always kind of intimidated by it, and honestly, it sounded boring. But again, it wasn't until I started researching for this video that I realized how beneficial meditation can be for your brain function and combating all these problems we've talked about today. And as the weeks went on and I was meditating more, I noticed tangible benefits like managing distractions and thinking clearer. Because the way meditation works is that it's not actually about preventing thoughts, but engaging with them, not in an analytical or focused way. Rather, it cultivates awareness of the present moment, including thoughts of life's ups and downs rather than blowing past them or suppressing them. And so I ended up reaching out to Headspace to be the sponsor of today's video because I feel like they're the perfect partner in starting and maintaining your meditation journey. If you don't know Headspace, they are the everyday mental health app that's proven to help stress less, sleep better, and feel happier. What I really like about Headspace is how easy they make meditation by offering guidance and a variety of course lengths to fit your needs. So if you have a hard time with spiraling in your thoughts or you only have a 3-minute break to fit meditation in, Headspace is your perfect companion. I found Headspace really helpful in keeping me consistent with the flexible courses, as well as how easy it is to just open it up at any point and get started. They also have a bunch of other features like breathing exercises, mindful walks and runs, and sleep content. The cool thing too is that just 10 days of Headspace is proven to decrease stress and increase happiness. So if you're interested in Headspace and battling your late-stage screen addiction like myself, then click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen and try it out entirely free for 60 days. Check it out and see how Headspace might be helpful to you. Finally, we've arrived at my favorite part of the video, actionable steps. I find that so often these conversations on screen addiction end on the most unmotivational shoulder shrug note of, well, here we are and we don't know what to do about it. But I was determined to not let this video end like that, so I left a huge chunk at the end here to talk about actionable steps that actually work, because the answer is not just succumbing to the crap hand we've been dealt. But first, I do want to talk about the stuff that doesn't work, because I feel like it's the most common advice I've seen. So let's start with digital detoxes, since I already mentioned them in this video. The reason these don't work is because if you've ever actually done one, you'll know literally nothing changes once you're done. Sure, the detox helps reset your brain a bit, but as soon as it's over, most of us just fall right back into our old habits. The other thing I see suggested a lot is dumb phones. If you haven't heard of dumb phones, they're growing in popularity and they're just as they sound, a stripped down version of a smartphone. Models vary, but most of them have the basics: calls, texts, an alarm, calculator, calculator and GPS if you're lucky. The idea is that they're an upgrade from the old flip phone, but with no ability to get you distracted. And it's a really cool idea in theory, but for the average person, I feel like it's completely unrealistic. Let me tell you, I went down this rabbit hole because I was super into it and I really wanted to find a dumb phone that would work for me. But the thing is, the overarching problem with them is that they dictate a one-size-fits-all definition of what counts as distraction. But what one person would qualify as a minimal phone is probably different from what someone else would qualify as a minimal phone. Take the Light Phone 3, for example. It's really cool and well made, but just so limited. It consists of only calling, texting, alarm, calculator, calendar, directions, notes, and a music player. But what does a girl have to do to get her banking app on this phone? Because that is solely a practical app. There's no distraction in it. And to be honest, I know this goes against the whole dumb phone idea, but I want an internet browser on my phone. Is that distracting? Kind of, but not in a doom scrolling kind of way. The thing is, I'm a mom and I want to be able to look up what the difference is between an insect and a bug for my kids whenever questions like that come up. Sue me. Now, we can already hear the critics ringing in my ears. Why don't you just delete social media? Yeah, what a great idea. As if I didn't already try that. Also, to stay away fully from short form, you would have to delete YouTube, and that's just such a big source of media that I'm not willing to sacrifice. I also want to note that I don't think these apps are horrible in the sense that there's so much valuable content on them. They just serve it to you in the most horrifically addictive way. But to take you through my process here, previous to researching for this video, I would go through weekly cycles of deleting Instagram and TikTok, but it just wasn't sustainable because when I would get them back for work or just to catch up with people, I would get sucked right back into them. And this is because I was trying to rely on my willpower alone to overcome the apps, something you're probably also familiar with.
What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
Like, how many of us have tried the daily timers or the app blockers that only take like 2 clicks to bypass?
Oh my god, my screen time is 5 hours today. That is insane.
You know what you gotta do is you gotta set a time limit on your phone because that way it'll pop out and you can just dismiss it and it actually does nothing to change how much time you spend on the app whatsoever. It's just a minor inconvenience every 15 minutes throughout the day.
Oh my god, that's a perfect feature for me.
They just don't work in my opinion, or at least don't work for a lot of people because they try and stop you when you're already knee-deep. What we need to do is create a system where we don't rely on our self-control alone to take on the power of 1,000 suns worth of engineers manipulating our brains. So finally, here's what I've been doing and what's been working really well for me. First of all, turn off basically all notifications on your phone. We need to decrease the amount of times our phones are crying for our attention, and one way to do that is by only letting it tell us about urgent things. For me, that means only leaving on my calls, messages, and email notifications. Nothing else is really that pressing, and everything else that is important, I will eventually get to it on my own, like my YouTube studio. I don't need to be told about the comments coming in because I know I'm gonna go on the app and check it anyway when I have the time. But this also goes for all social media apps. Like, there's literally no reason for them to be sending me notifications. Along with that, turn off all the red badges. I honestly think that they mean nothing. Like, again, if it's something important, chances are I'm gonna open the app anyway, and I don't need a Gmail showing me that I have 4,000 emails that I haven't opened. That's way too stressful to look at, and I'm choosing ignorance instead. Sites foster a sort of distracted lingering, partially by lumping multiple services together. To answer a friend request, we'll pass by the newsfeed, where pictures and autoplay videos seduce us into scrolling through an infinite stream of posts. What Harris calls the bottomless bowl, referring to a study that found people eat 73% more soup out of a self-refilling bowl than out of regular ones, without realizing they've consumed extra. The friend request tab will nudge us to add even more context by suggesting people you may know, and in a split second, our unconscious impulses cause the cycle to continue. Once we send the friend request, an alert appears on the recipient's phone in a bright red and trigger color. Harris says more likely than some other hues to make people click. And because seeing our name taps into a hardwired sense of social obligation, she will drop everything to answer. In the end, he says, companies stand back watching as 1 billion people run around like chickens with their heads cut off, responding to each other and feeling indebted to each other. So the goal here is to cut off the cycle before it even starts. Turn off those notifications. To get back on the topic of dopamine for a quick sec, something else I found super helpful is learning that your brain is most sensitive to dopamine in the morning. That means this is the time you should be staying away from your phone, but that doesn't mean you need to completely remove scrolling from your life. The goal isn't to ban dopamine, but to make sure that the first hits of the day are intentional and rewarding in the long term. The things that you're happy to reinforce with dopamine, like exercise, writing, or work, or whatever, stuff that you want your body to crave the next day, is what you should be doing at the beginning of the day. Then later on, when you're already tired and your body is less sensitive to dopamine, aka the evening, you can feel less guilty about scrolling because you've already accomplished what you wanted from the day. But the thing that's been the most transformative for me has been decentralizing my phone. The heart of the issue, as I see it, is that the more we look at our phones, the more opportunities they have to draw us in. So we need to be using our phones less. And what decentralizing looks like is taking jobs away from our phones and reverting to the old school ways of doing things. But I'll go through what my system looks like. First, I outsourced Instagram to be desktop only. This allows me to check in on everyone once a day so I don't miss anything, but I don't even have to hold myself back from it because it's just not as fun on desktop. Like, I'm not about to sit there and scroll reels on desktop. I don't know, it's just not the same experience. I did also get a digital watch, which I'm probably too excited about. I did this because when I was trying to use my phone less, I realized that I kept going back to it to check the time, of course. And something as simple as checking the time is a death sentence because the second you look at it, you're hit with notifications. The reason the watch works so well is because I can go without having my phone on my body at all times. I can have it lying around somewhere, out of sight and out of mind. And to make sure I don't miss anything important, because I get stressed out about that, I do leave the ringer on so that if there is something that comes up, I'm notified of it. I do realize this sounds so silly for me to explain putting your ringer on, like as if that's a new concept, but I do feel like no one uses their ringer anymore, so I just had to say it. The biggest decentralizing change that I made, though, was actually getting a clock radio, which sounds silly because, like, how big of a difference could that make? But this thing means that I don't have to keep my phone on my bedside table at night anymore because I only had it there for the alarm. Instead, I plug my phone in the kitchen every night before I get ready for bed, and this has completely eliminated doom scrolling because it's just literally not possible. When I go to bed is when I go to bed. What a crazy thought. Now I get into bed, and if I don't feel like sleeping right away, I'll just read my book for a bit until I pass out. The last thing I want to mention is that I'm just really cautious about when I open TikTok because you want to be able to make these decisions before you're deep in the algorithm. So if I'm going to open it, I do it when I know that there's a definitive end point, like something that will pull me out of it. Not just I'll scroll for 10 minutes, but something like when I'm blow drying my hair, I can open it up because I know when my hair is dry, I turn it off, and then I get that chance to, consciously choose to not go back on it. But all these things combined mean that I'm able to keep TikTok on my phone and stay away from scrolling when I'm not meaning to. What a concept. The name of the game for me is really just needing your phone less and removing self-control out of the equation. Overall, the experience has been honestly really freeing and not stressful. So those are the things that have been working for me. I do want to say it's not like I'm perfect and fully immune to my phone anymore, but it has been a drastic difference from where I was before. I also want to hear if you have any tips that have helped you decrease your screen time without giving up technology as a whole. But the thing that really prompted me to make this video was realizing how much of my life was just in this position and how uncomfortable it made me feel to think about viewing myself from a third person point of view, that so much of my life is that. But another interesting thought I've been having is that phones already seem like they're on their way out because, like I said, people are just done with phones. They're not enjoyable anymore. But I'm not sure if we're going to go in the direction of people rejecting the phones, like with the rise in the dumb phones, or if phones are just going to become so integrated, or like the apps and such on our phones are going to become so integrated into our minds and our lives that they're inescapable. Very Black Mirror of us. But anyways, I hope this video gave you some hope that our lives can be bigger than our screens and we don't need to just succumb to the tech giants' wishes. But that is all for today. Make sure you subscribe if you want more video essays on technology and culture and community and such. Also check out my merch if you haven't yet, and I wish you the opportunity to let your mind wander today. Just a reminder to check out Headspace using my link in the description or scan the QR code to try it out free for 60 days.
I'm so happy to share with you every portrait photo you've ever taken in your camera roll, mixed with a royalty-free version of Ho Hey by the Lumineers. We actually found a photo of your really toxic ex, as well as a couple fun little spring break photos from 2019. We just pulled them out at random, and then a random screenshot that we found, and we put it all into this little album, and we're calling it 2019 Memories. It's in Comic Sans font, and we chose the world's worst song as the background music. Is that something you want to see? Let us know. The play button's right there.